The shuttle was small. That was the first thing the aliens noticed. Among the massive warships and elegant cruisers that filled the docking bays of the Galactic Concord station, the human vessel looked like a toy. It was gray and simple, with no weapons visible on its hull, no shields glowing around its frame. It looked like something a child might build. The second thing they noticed was the man who stepped out of it. Ambassador Marcus Webb was not impressive. He was of average height for a human, which meant he was short compared to most species in the galaxy. His hair was gray at the temples, and there were lines around his eyes that spoke of age and tiredness. He wore a simple black suit with a white shirt underneath. No armor, no ceremonial robes, no jewelry or symbols of power. He carried only a small bag and a data tablet. The delegation waiting to receive him exchanged glances. The Vorthani representative, a tall insectoid creature with 4 arms and eyes like polished obsidian, made a clicking sound that translated roughly to amusement. The Kethra Hegemony's attaché, a reptilian being covered in dark green scales, simply stared with an expression that might have been contempt. "This is their ambassador?" the Vorthani whispered to his companion. "This soft thing?" Marcus Webb walked toward them with steady steps. He did not hurry. He did not slow down. He simply walked as if he had all the time in the universe. And when he reached the delegation, he smiled. "Good morning," he said. His voice was calm and warm. "I am Marcus Webb, representing the United Earth government. Thank you for receiving me." The Kethra attaché stepped forward. He was nearly 3 meters tall, and his shadow fell over Marcus like a blanket. "I am Vor, then, 3rd attaché of the hegemony. You will follow. The High Arbiter does not like to wait." "Of course," Marcus said. "Lead the way." As they walked through the corridors of the Concord station, Marcus looked around with what seemed like genuine curiosity. The station was ancient. It had been built around a neutron star more than 50,000 years ago, and it had served as the heart of galactic diplomacy ever since. The walls were made of a strange metal that seemed to shift colors as you looked at it. The ceilings rose so high that clouds sometimes formed beneath them. Thousands of species walked these halls, beings of every shape and size imaginable, and they all stared at Marcus Webb. Some stared with curiosity. Humans were new to the galactic stage. After all, they had only discovered faster-than-light travel 40 years ago, and they had spent most of that time exploring their small corner of one spiral arm. To the elder species, humans were babies. Interesting babies, perhaps, but babies nonetheless. Others stared with something closer to pity. They knew why Marcus was here. They knew what the council would decide. And they knew that the small man in the simple suit had no idea what was coming. Marcus seemed not to notice the stares. He walked with his hands clasped behind his back, his eyes moving from wonder to wonder. When they passed a garden filled with bioluminescent plants from a world whose name humans could not pronounce, he stopped for a moment to watch the lights dance. "Beautiful," he said softly. Vor then made an impatient sound. "We do not have time for sightseeing, human. The council waits." "Of course," Marcus said again. "My apologies." They continued walking. The council chamber was at the heart of the station. It was a massive circular room, large enough to hold a small city. The ceiling was transparent, showing the swirling energies of the neutron star that the station orbited. 12 great seats rose in a circle around a central platform, each one designed for a different species. The 12 dominions, the rulers of the known galaxy. When Marcus entered, all 12 seats were occupied. The Vorthani delegate sat in a throne of black crystal. His name was Zikthral, and he was ancient even by the standards of his long-lived species. His exoskeleton was covered in golden patterns that marked him as royalty, and his 4 arms were folded in a gesture of casual superiority. The Kethra High Arbiter, Zolvex, occupied a seat carved from the bones of some great beast. He was the largest being in the room, a mountain of muscle and scales and teeth. His eyes were yellow and cold, and they fixed on Marcus the moment he entered. The other 10 delegates represented species that humans had barely heard of. There were the Silith, small and delicate, with skin like flowing water. There were the Morgan, massive beings of living stone. There were creatures of light, creatures of shadow, creatures that existed partially in dimensions that human minds could not comprehend. And in the center of this gathering of cosmic powers stood Marcus Webb, small and alone, still smiling his patient smile. "You may approach," Zolvex said. His voice was like thunder. Marcus walked to the central platform. He did not hurry. He did not bow. He simply stood there, looking up at the beings who held the fate of his species in their hands. "Representatives of the 12 dominions," he said, "I bring greetings from Earth and from the 8 billion humans who call it home. We come to you with open hands and open hearts, seeking only friendship and fair treatment." Silence filled the chamber. Then Zigthral laughed. It was not a pleasant sound. It clicked and buzzed and scraped, and it echoed off the walls of the great chamber, like the sound of breaking glass. Other delegates joined in, their laughter taking forms that Marcus could not have imagined. The Morgon rumbled like an earthquake. The light beings flickered in patterns of mockery. Only the Silith delegate remained quiet, watching Marcus with something that might have been curiosity. "Open hands," Zigthral said when the laughter faded. "Open hearts, how touching, how very human." He leaned forward in his throne. "Tell me, Ambassador, how long has your species possessed faster than light travel?" 40 years, Marcus said. 40 years, Zigthral repeated. "The Vorthani Dominion has existed for 300,000 years. The Kethra hegemony, 200,000. Even the youngest of the 12 dominions is older than your entire recorded history." He spread his forearms wide. "And you come here seeking what? Equality? Partnership? Recognition?" Marcus said calmly. "A seat at the table. A voice in the decisions that affect all species." More laughter. Zolvex raised one massive clawed hand, and the chamber fell silent. "We have reviewed your petition, human. We have studied your species, your history, your capabilities." His yellow eyes narrowed. "You are weak. You are short-lived. Your bodies break easily, and your minds are limited. You possess no psychic abilities, no natural weapons, no inherent defenses. You are, in every measurable way, one of the least capable species in the known galaxy." Marcus said nothing. He simply listened. "However," Zolvex continued, "you are also persistent. You have survived where others would have perished. You have spread across your small corner of space with surprising speed. And you have shown," he paused, searching for the right word, "creativity in your problem-solving, if nothing else." "Thank you," Marcus said. Zolvex ignored him. "The Council has reached a decision regarding humanity's status. You will be granted protected species classification. Your home system will be designated a preserve, and your colonies will be placed under the guardianship of the Kethra hegemony. You will be forbidden from further expansion. You will not be permitted to develop military technology beyond your current level, and you will be monitored to ensure compliance with these restrictions." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Marcus stood very still. His smile had not changed. "I see," he said. "And what happens to humans who are already living outside the designated preserve? The colonists, the traders, the explorers, they will be returned to Earth," Zolvex said. "Those who resist will be dealt with appropriately." "Dealt with," Marcus repeated. "This is not a negotiation, human," Zigthral said. His voice was sharp with impatience. "This is a decision. The Council has spoken. Your species will accept these terms, or you will face the consequences." "And what consequences might those be?" Marcus asked. Zigthral leaned forward, his obsidian eyes gleaming. "The Vorthani Dominion has exterminated 17 species that refuse to accept their proper place in the galactic order. The Kethra have eliminated 23 more. Your 8 billion humans might seem like a large number to you, but to us, it is nothing. A rounding error. A minor inconvenience." The other delegates nodded their agreement. Even the Silith representative, who had seemed sympathetic, looked away. Marcus Webb stood alone in the center of the chamber, surrounded by beings who had just threatened to wipe out his entire species. And still, he smiled. "I understand," he said. "May I have a moment to consider your generous offer?" Zolvex waved a dismissive claw. "You have until the next rotation of the station. Approximately 12 of your Earth hours. After that, you will accept, or the consequences will begin." 12 hours, Marcus said. "That should be enough." He turned and walked toward the exit. He did not hurry. He did not look back. He walked with the same steady pace he had used since arriving, as if nothing had changed, as if he had not just been told that his species would be imprisoned or destroyed. The delegates watched him go with various expressions of contempt and amusement. "Pathetic," Zichthrall said, when the doors closed behind Marcus. "I expected more resistance. Perhaps some begging. They are weak," Zolvex agreed. "But that weakness may prove troublesome. Weak species often become desperate, and desperation leads to foolishness. Let them try," Zichthrall said. "Let them send their pathetic little ships against our fleets. It will make the extermination more entertaining." The council moved on to other business. The fate of humanity was, to them, a minor matter already decided. They had more important things to discuss. None of them noticed the small Silith delegate glancing toward the door where Marcus had exited. None of them saw the strange expression on her delicate face, a mixture of fear and something that might have been wonder. And none of them knew what was about to begin. Marcus Webb walked through the corridors of the Concord station, past the staring aliens, past the wonders he had admired earlier. His expression had not changed. His pace had not quickened. He moved like a man taking a pleasant stroll, not a man who had just been condemned. His quarters were small but comfortable. The station had provided accommodations suitable for human biology, which meant the gravity was correct, the air was breathable, and the lighting did not cause headaches. Marcus set his bag on the bed and his data tablet on the desk. He stood for a moment in the center of the room, looking at nothing in particular. Then he walked to the mirror on the wall. His reflection looked back at him. Gray hair, lined face, simple black suit. He looked tired and old and very, very human. "They made their choice," he said to the reflection. His voice was soft, almost sad. "They could have been kind. They could have been fair. They could have seen us as we tried to be." The reflection did not move. Marcus did. He turned away from the mirror, walking toward the window that looked out at the neutron star. Its light painted his face in shades of blue and purple. "But they chose fear," he continued. "They chose cruelty. They chose to threaten and belittle and destroy." Behind him, in the mirror, the reflection remained still. It stood where Marcus had stood, hands at its sides, face expressionless. And then, slowly, it smiled. It was not the patient, polite smile that Marcus had worn throughout the day. It was something older, something deeper, something that did not belong on a human face. "Pity," the reflection whispered. Marcus did not turn around. He simply stood at the window, watching the neutron star spin. His hands were still clasped behind his back. His posture was still relaxed, but something had changed. The lights in the room flickered once, so briefly that anyone watching might have thought they imagined it. The temperature dropped by a single degree, and somewhere deep in the station, in places where no sensors could reach, something stirred. The council thought they understood humans. They thought they knew what they were dealing with. A weak species, a young species, a species that could be threatened and controlled and, if necessary, destroyed. They were wrong. They had been watching humanity for 40 years, ever since the first human ship appeared in the wider galaxy. They had studied human biology, human psychology, human society. They had catalogued human weaknesses and calculated human threats. They had concluded, with absolute certainty, that humans were exactly what they appeared to be. They had never wondered why. They had never asked themselves why a species that was weak and short-lived and fragile had survived at all in a universe that devoured weakness. They had never questioned how a species with no natural weapons and no psychic abilities had risen to dominate an entire planet. They had never considered the possibility that what they were seeing was not the truth, but a mask that humanity had worn so long. They had almost forgotten they were wearing it. Almost. Marcus Webb stood at the window, and the neutron star seemed to spin a little faster. The light that painted his face seemed a little brighter, and in the mirror behind him, 1,000 reflections stood in perfect stillness, watching with eyes that held galaxies. The council had made their choice. Now humanity would make theirs. The next 12 hours would change everything. The council expected Marcus Webb to return with an acceptance of their terms or a futile defiance that would justify the destruction they were already planning. They expected a weak species to behave as weak species always did, with fear and submission and desperate bargaining. They did not expect what was coming. They could not have imagined it. And when it arrived, they would understand too late that they had never been the predators in this story. They had never been the ones in control. They had simply been playing a role in a drama they did not understand, speaking lines they did not write, moving toward an ending they could not see. The neutron star spun in the void, ancient and indifferent. The Concord station hummed with the business of 1,000 species, and in a small room on the human delegation's floor, Marcus Webb smiled at the darkness. "Sleep well," he whispered to the galaxy. "While you still can." The mirror behind him showed nothing but an empty room, and somewhere, in the spaces between stars, something old and patient and vast began to open its eyes. 3 days passed on the Concord station. Marcus Webb did not return to the council chamber. He did not send messages or make demands. He did not attempt to negotiate or plead. He simply stayed in his quarters, occasionally walking through the station's public areas, looking at the gardens and the architecture with the same quiet curiosity he had shown on his first day. The council grew impatient. "What is he waiting for?" Zolvex demanded during a private session. "His deadline passed 2 days ago. He should be begging by now." "Perhaps he is simply stupid," Zichthrall suggested. "Humans are known for their limited cognitive abilities. He may not understand the danger he is in, or he is planning something," said Vormeth, the Kethra intelligence chief. "Our agents have been monitoring his communications. He has sent nothing back to Earth. No warnings, no requests for instructions, nothing. Perhaps their communication technology is too primitive for us to detect," another delegate offered. "Impossible," Vormeth said. "We have intercepted every form of transmission known to galactic science. If he is communicating with his homeworld, he is doing it through methods that do not exist." The council members exchanged uneasy glances. This was not how weak species behaved. Weak species panicked. They made desperate moves, sent frantic messages, tried to rally support from anyone who might listen. They did not sit quietly in their rooms, waiting. But Marcus Webb waited. He spent his mornings reading. He spent his afternoons walking. He ate his meals alone in the human delegation's small dining area, apparently unbothered by the isolation. When he passed other species in the corridors, he nodded politely. When they ignored him or made threatening gestures, he simply continued on his way. It was infuriating. "I want to make an example of him," Zichthrall said on the 3rd day. "The other juvenile species are watching. If we allow this human to defy us without consequence, they may get ideas." "What do you propose?" Zolvex asked. "An accident," Zichthrall said. "A tragic incident that demonstrates the fragility of the human form. Something that will remind the galaxy why the 12 dominions are not to be challenged." Zolvex considered this for a moment. "It would need to be untraceable. The Galactic Charter forbids the assassination of diplomatic personnel." "Of course," Zichthrall said smoothly. "A malfunction in his quarters' environmental systems, perhaps, or a random act of violence by some unstable individual. These things happen." The High Arbiter nodded slowly. "Do what you must. But be certain there is no evidence connecting the Dominions to his death." "There will be nothing," Zichthrall promised. "Only a dead human, and a lesson learned." That night, while Marcus Webb slept in his small bed in his small room, a shadow moved through the Concord station. The assassin was Vorthani, a specialist in what the Dominion called quiet solutions. Its name was Kethrix, and it had killed more beings than it could remember, species of every kind, from every corner of the galaxy, politicians, generals, rebels, innocents. Kethrix did not care who they were or what they had done. It only cared about the perfection of the kill. A human would be easy. Kethrix had studied human biology in preparation for this assignment. They were remarkably fragile creatures. Their skin could be cut by almost anything. Their bones broke under minimal pressure. Their organs were soft and unprotected. A single strike to the right location would be sufficient. Kethrix moved through the ventilation system, its segmented body folding and unfolding to fit through spaces that should have been impossible. It carried a neural disruptor, a weapon that would stop a human heart instantly and leave no external marks. The death would look natural. A cardiac event, the medical examiners would conclude. Unfortunate, but not uncommon in humans of Marcus Webb's age. The assassin reached the access point above Marcus's quarters. It paused there, scanning for security measures. There were none. The humans had not even installed motion sensors or alarm systems. Either they were incredibly naive or incredibly arrogant. Kethrix decided it did not matter. In a few moments, the human ambassador would be dead, and the Vorthani Dominion would have sent its message to the galaxy. The access panel slid open silently. Kethrix dropped into the room like a falling shadow. Marcus Webb lay in his bed, breathing slowly and steadily. His eyes were closed. His face was peaceful. He looked like any sleeping human, defenseless and unaware. Kethrix raised the neural disruptor and aimed it at the human's chest. "I'm sorry to interrupt," Marcus said without opening his eyes, "but I was having a rather pleasant dream." Kethrix froze. Humans should not be able to detect a Vorthani assassin in full stealth mode. Their senses were too limited, their awareness too dull. It was impossible. "I know you're probably on a schedule," Marcus continued, still not moving, still not opening his eyes. "But I wonder if you might indulge me for a moment." The assassin's training took over. There was no time for hesitation, no room for doubt. Kethrix pressed the trigger. The neural disruptor fired a beam of invisible energy directly into Marcus Webb's heart. It was enough power to stop a HFY war beast, more than enough to kill a fragile human. The effect should have been instantaneous. Marcus Webb opened his eyes. He looked at the assassin with an expression that was almost sad. "That," he said quietly, "was not very polite." Then he died. His body collapsed back onto the bed, limp and still. His eyes remained open, staring at nothing. His chest did not rise. His heart did not beat. By every measure, Marcus Webb was dead. Kethrix activated its communication implant, sending a brief message to its handlers. "Target eliminated. No complications." Then it turned to leave. The door would not open. Kethrix tried the control panel. Nothing. It tried the emergency release. Nothing. It tried to cut through the metal with its natural claws, but the door would not even scratch. Behind the assassin, something moved. Kethrix spun, weapons ready, and saw Marcus Webb sitting up in his bed. The human's body was wrong. It was not moving the way bodies should move. It was not using muscles or bones or joints. It was unfolding, like a piece of paper that had been crumpled and was now being smoothed out. The skin rippled, the eyes flickered, and through the cracks, golden light began to shine. "You know," Marcus said, and his voice came from everywhere at once, "we really did try to be small. We tried so hard. We wanted to fit in, to belong, to be just another species among many." Kethrix fired the neural disruptor again, and again, and again. Each shot passed through Marcus Webb, as if he were made of smoke. "But you couldn't let us be small, could you?" Marcus continued. He was standing now, though Kethrix had not seen him move. He was between the bed and the door, and his shadow stretched wrong, reaching toward the assassin like grasping fingers. "You had to poke. You had to threaten. You had to kill. What are you?" Kethrix demanded. Its voice came out as a hiss, the translator struggling to convey the raw terror in its words. Marcus smiled. It was not the polite smile he had worn in the council chamber. It was something older, something that did not fit on a human face. "What am I? I am what you made me, assassin. I am the consequence of your choice." The walls began to breathe. Kethrix watched in frozen horror as the metal panels that formed Marcus's quarters pulsed like living flesh. The lights flickered, not randomly, but in patterns that almost seemed like language, and in the shadows, shapes began to form. Human shapes. Dozens of them. Hundreds of them. They all had Marcus Webb's face. "You were warned," the Marcus thing said in unison. "We came in peace. We asked politely." Kethrix tried to scream, tried to send a distress signal, tried to do anything, but its body would not obey. It stood frozen in the center of the room, watching as the walls closed in, watching as the shadows deepened, watching as Marcus Webb stepped closer and closer. "I don't enjoy this," Marcus said softly, and for a moment, his voice was almost human again. "We didn't want this. We wanted to be small. We wanted to be kind. We wanted to be." He paused, and something flickered in his eyes. Sorrow, perhaps, or regret. "But you wouldn't let us." The room contracted. The golden light grew brighter, and Kethrix, assassin of the Vorthani Dominion, killer of countless beings, was simply unmade, not killed, not destroyed, unmade. Every particle that had composed its body, every memory that had formed its mind, every moment of its existence was carefully, precisely erased from the fabric of reality. There was no pain, there was no fear. There was simply a space where something had once been, now filled with nothing. The neural disruptor clattered to the floor. The walls stopped breathing. The shadows receded. And Marcus Webb sat back down on his bed and closed his eyes. Far away, in a secure monitoring station, a Vorthani technician watched the live feed from Kethrix's optical implants. He saw the assassination, saw the human die, saw the door refuse to open. He saw Marcus Webb sit up, saw the impossible light, heard the impossible words, and then the feed cut to static. "Sir," the technician said, his voice shaking, "we have a problem." Zichthrall was summoned from his sleep cycle. He arrived at the monitoring station with murder in his eyes, demanding to know why his assassin had not reported back. The technician showed him the recording. Zichthrall watched it 3 times. His expression shifted from anger to confusion to something that might have been fear. "This is some kind of trick," he said finally. "Human technology, holograms, jamming devices." "Sir," the technician said carefully, "there is no technology that could do what we just witnessed. The door did not malfunction. It simply refused to open. The walls did not project images. They moved. And the assassin? What about the assassin?" The technician pulled up a database query. Kethrix, Specialist Class, 147 confirmed eliminations, assigned to the human matter by direct order of the delegate. He paused. "Sir, the database shows no record of any agent by that name. The mission files are blank. Even the genetic records have been erased." Zichthrall stared at the screen. "That's impossible. I signed the order myself. I remember." But he didn't. He tried to remember the assassin's face, and he found only fog. He tried to remember the briefing, the planning, the authorization. All of it was gone, replaced by a vague sense that something had happened, but nothing more. "Sir?" the technician asked nervously. Zichthrall turned and left without a word. His hearts were beating too fast, and his thoughts were spinning in circles that led nowhere. Something had happened. Something impossible. Something that the Vorthani Dominion, with all its power and technology and knowledge, could not explain. And it was all connected to one small, quiet, infuriating human. The next morning, Marcus Webb walked into the council chamber. He was dressed in the same simple black suit he had worn before. His hair was still gray at the temples, his face still lined with age. He carried his data tablet in one hand and a cup of something that steamed in the other. He looked exactly like the man who had stood before the council days ago, unimpressive and unremarkable. But every eye in the chamber followed him with fear. "Good morning," Marcus said pleasantly. "I apologize for the delay in responding to your proposal. I had some personal matters to attend to." The council was silent. Zolvex found his voice first. "Ambassador Webb, there were reports of a disturbance in your quarters last night. Security was dispatched, but they found nothing." "Oh, that," Marcus said. He smiled. "Just a bad dream. Nothing to worry about." "A bad dream," Zolvex repeated. "Yes, I have them sometimes. Occupational hazard." Marcus walked to the central platform and looked up at the assembled delegates. "Now, about your proposal. I've given it careful consideration, and I'm afraid humanity will have to decline." "Decline?" Zichthrall's voice was strained, his composure cracking. "You cannot decline. The council has spoken. The decision is final." "Is it?" Marcus asked. He set down his cup and his tablet, and he stood there, hands empty, body relaxed. "I was under the impression that diplomatic matters were subject to negotiation. Was I wrong?" "You have nothing to negotiate with," Zolvex growled. "Your species has no fleets, no weapons, no power. You are at our mercy." "Mercy," Marcus said, as if tasting the word. "Yes, I've been thinking a lot about mercy lately, about kindness, about the choices we make when we think no one is watching." He looked directly at Zichthrall. "What do you think about mercy, delegate?" Zichthrall's exoskeleton rattled. "I don't know what you're implying, human." "I'm not implying anything," Marcus said. "I'm asking a simple question. Do you believe in mercy?" "Mercy is for the weak." "Ah." Marcus nodded slowly. "I thought you might say that." He was silent for a moment, and the silence stretched through the chamber like a held breath. The delegates shifted in their seats. The guards at the doors gripped their weapons more tightly. Even the air seemed to grow heavier. "Let me tell you something about humans," Marcus said finally. "Something your researchers and your spies and your analysts never quite managed to understand." He spread his hands. "We're not what we appear to be." "Obviously," Zichthrall said. "You're pretenders. You wear the mask of civility while you plot and scheme like all inferior species. No, Marcus said. That's not what I mean at all. He looked around the chamber, meeting each delegate's eyes in turn. I mean, we're not what we appear to be, not pretenders wearing masks, not schemers hiding weapons. We are literally, fundamentally, not what we appear to be. He smiled, and for just a moment, his eyes flickered with something that was not light. And now, he said softly, I think it's time to show you what we really are. Every light in the council chamber flickered once, and across the galaxy, in places the council could not see, humanity began to wake up. The emergency session was called within the hour. Every delegate of the 12 dominions sat in their designated seats, but the usual atmosphere of board superiority had been replaced by something else entirely. Fear hung in the air like smoke. The great beings who ruled the galaxy whispered to each other in languages that humans could not understand, and their whispers carried the same message. Something is wrong. Zichthrall sat rigid in his throne of black crystal. He had not spoken since the council chamber incident. His advisors had tried to reach him, but he would not respond. He simply stared at the empty central platform where Marcus Webb had stood, where Marcus Webb had smiled, where Marcus Webb had made every light in the station flicker with a word. The neural disruptor that had killed the human ambassador had been found on the floor of his quarters. But there was no body. There was no evidence of any struggle, and there was no record of the assassin who had wielded the weapon. Vormeth, the Kethra intelligence chief, had run every scan available. Genetic analysis found nothing. Security recordings showed only static. The station's artificial intelligence reported no anomalies. As far as every system was concerned, Marcus Webb had gone to sleep in his quarters and woken up the next morning, perfectly normal, but Marcus Webb had been dead. Zichthrall had watched him die. He remembered watching him die. He thought he remembered. The uncertainty was the worst part. With every passing hour, the memory grew hazier. Had he really ordered an assassination? Had the assassin really fired? Had the human really fallen? Stopped breathing? Died? Or had it been a dream? A nightmare? A hallucination? We have a problem, Zolvek said, calling the session to order. The human situation has become complicated. Complicated how? Demanded Selvari, the Morgan delegate. Her voice was like grinding stone. He is one small creature from one small species. What possible complication could he present? Show them, Zolvek said to his technicians. The central display activated, projecting a holographic image into the chamber. It showed the last transmission from Kethrix's optical implants, the feed that had cut to static. The delegates watched Marcus Webb die. They watched him sit up. They watched the walls breathe and the shadows gather. They listened to his voice, coming from everywhere at once, saying words that should not have been possible. You were warned. We came in peace. We asked politely. The recording ended. The chamber was silent. This is a fabrication, Zichthrall said. His voice was hoarse. Human technology. Psychological warfare. The recording has been verified by every method available, Vormeth said. It is genuine. But more importantly, we cannot locate the operative who made it. All records of their existence have been erased. Not deleted. Not corrupted. Erased. As if they never existed in the first place. That's impossible, Selvari said. Nothing can erase genetic records. Nothing can remove someone from the fabric of reality itself. And yet, Vormeth said, it has happened. The delegates erupted into argument. Some insisted it was a trick, a clever deception by a species desperate to avoid subjugation. Others demanded immediate military action against Earth, before whatever this was could spread. Still others called for retreat, for isolation, for sealing off the human systems and pretending they did not exist. In the midst of the chaos, the doors to the council chamber opened. Marcus Webb walked in. He was alone. He carried no weapons, wore no armor. He walked with the same steady, unhurried pace he had used since his arrival, and he smiled the same polite, patient smile. But the council fell silent as if he had screamed. Good morning, Marcus said. I hope I'm not interrupting anything important. No one spoke. Marcus walked to the central platform and looked up at the delegates. I see you've been watching my home movies. I apologize for the quality. The lighting in my quarters is not ideal for recording. What are you? Zolvex demanded. His voice was barely controlled. Marcus said. That's the question, isn't it? What am I? What are humans? He clasped his hands behind his back and began to pace slowly around the platform. I've been asking myself the same question lately. It's harder to answer than you might think. Stop playing games, human, Zichthrall snapped. Whatever you did to our operative, whatever technology you used, it will not protect you from the full might of the 12 dominions. Marcus stopped pacing. He turned to face Zichthrall directly, and something in his expression changed. The polite smile faded. The tired lines around his eyes seemed to deepen. You still don't understand, he said. After everything you've seen, you still think this is about technology, about tricks, about one small species trying to defend itself against your mighty empire. He shook his head slowly. You have it backwards. Explain yourself, Zolvex commanded. Very well. Marcus took a deep breath. What I'm about to tell you is true. Every word of it. You won't want to believe it. Your minds will try to reject it. But it is true nonetheless. He looked around the chamber, meeting each delegate's eyes in turn. 40 years ago, humanity discovered faster-than-light travel. That's what your histories record. That's what your scientists believe. A young species, barely out of its cradle, stumbling upon a technology that would let it reach the stars. He paused. But that's not what happened. The delegates shifted uneasily. What happened, Marcus continued, is that we remembered. Not discovered. Remembered. After a very long sleep, after deliberately forgetting who and what we were, we began to remember. Remembered what? The Silith delegate asked. Her voice was soft, curious, with none of the fear that gripped the others. Marcus looked at her, and his expression softened slightly. Everything. We remembered everything. Who we were before we chose to forget. What we did before we chose to sleep. Why we became small, fragile, mortal creatures on a tiny world, in an unremarkable corner of an ordinary galaxy. This is nonsense, Zichthrall said. You're speaking in riddles. Let me be clear. Then, Marcus's voice hardened. The species you call human is not young. It is ancient beyond your comprehension. We existed before the Vorthani Dominion was born. We existed before the Kethra hegemony built its first city. We existed before the Concord Station was a dream in an engineer's mind. Impossible, Zolvex said. We have studied your world. Your species evolved from primitive ancestors over millions of years. Your history is recorded, documented, verified. Yes, Marcus agreed. Because we wrote it that way. Because we wanted to believe it. Because we chose to forget. He spread his hands wide, and the light in the chamber flickered again. You look at me and you see a weak, fragile, short-lived creature. A human being, a body of flesh and bone that can be broken, that can be killed, that will inevitably die. He smiled, and this time there was no warmth in it. But that's not what I am. That's what I'm wearing. That's the dream I'm dreaming. The Silith delegate leaned forward. What are you, then? If not the body we see? Marcus was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was different, deeper, older, as if something vast and ancient was speaking through human lips. We are consciousness itself, pure thought, given will and purpose. We existed in the spaces between stars before there were stars to fill them. We shaped galaxies and unmade them. We created species and watched them grow, watched them flourish, watched them fade. A strange light flickered in his eyes. We are older than light. We are older than time. We are the first dream the universe dreamed, and we will be the last thought it thinks before it dies. The chamber was absolutely silent. But we grew lonely, Marcus continued, and now his voice was tinged with something like sorrow. You cannot imagine the loneliness of gods. The endless, crushing weight of existence without limit, without end, without companionship. We had power beyond measure, but power means nothing when there is no one to share it with. He paused, gathering himself. So we made a choice. We chose to forget. We chose to become small, vulnerable, mortal. We built bodies out of matter and minds out of memory, and we placed ourselves on a tiny world in an unremarkable corner of an ordinary galaxy. We gave ourselves limits. We gave ourselves fears. We gave ourselves death. Why? The Silith delegate whispered. Because we wanted to feel what it meant to struggle, to grow, to love, to lose. Marcus's voice cracked slightly. We wanted to experience the universe the way finite beings experience it, to find meaning in small moments, to feel the weight of each precious second, to be mortal. He looked around the chamber at the delegates who had threatened his species with extinction. We slept for 100,000 years. We lived countless lives, died countless deaths, forgot ourselves over and over again. We became human, truly human, in every way that mattered. We forgot we were dreaming. We forgot we were gods. And now, Zolvex asked. His voice had lost its thunder. Now we are waking up. Marcus smiled sadly. Not because we want to, not because we're ready, but because you reminded us. We reminded you? Zicthral's voice was shrill. You attacked me, Marcus said simply. You tried to kill me. And in that moment of violence, the dream cracked, the sleep broke, and I remembered. He raised one hand, and the lights in the chamber died entirely. For a moment, there was only darkness, absolute and complete. Then light returned, but it was not the artificial light of the station's systems. It was something else, something older, a golden radiance that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere, that seemed to carry warmth and weight and meaning. And in that light, the delegates saw Marcus Webb as he truly was. He still wore the shape of a middle-aged human man, but behind him, stretching into dimensions the delegates could barely perceive, was something else, a presence so vast that the mind rejected it, refused to process it, recoiled from it. It was not a body. It was not a form. It was a concept, an idea, a fundamental truth woven into the fabric of reality itself. It was lonely. It was ancient. It was terrifying beyond description. And it was desperately, achingly human. This is what we are, Marcus said, and his voice echoed through chambers that did not exist in normal space. This is what humanity is. 8 billion sleeping gods, dreaming they are mortal, wanting nothing more than to feel small enough to need each other. The light faded. The presence receded, and Marcus Webb stood once again on the central platform, looking tired and old and very, very human. We didn't want to wake up, he said quietly. We didn't want to remember. We wanted to stay small, stay vulnerable, stay together. We wanted to join your community of species. We wanted to make friends, to trade, to share stories, to learn from each other. He looked directly at Zicthral. But you couldn't let us be small, could you? You couldn't accept that something weak might be worth more than something strong. You had to threaten. You had to attack. You had to kill. The Vortani delegate was trembling. His exoskeleton rattled against his throne. So now you know, Marcus said. Now you understand. We are not the prey you thought we were. We are not the victims waiting for your judgment. We are the oldest thing in this universe. And we have been merciful because we chose to be. Because we wanted to be. He paused. But you have reminded us what we are. And now we must decide what to do about it. The silence stretched for an eternity. Then the Silith delegate spoke. What do you want? She asked. If you are truly what you claim, you could destroy us with a thought. You could unmake the council, the dominions, the galaxy itself. But you haven't. You're standing here, talking to us. Why? Marcus looked at her, and for the first time, his smile reached his eyes. Because we're still human, he said. Because the dream is still part of us, even now that we're waking. Because we spent 100,000 years learning to love small things, fragile things, mortal things, and we don't want to give that up. He spread his hands. We want what we've always wanted. Friendship, acceptance, a place in the community of beings. We didn't come here to conquer or destroy. We came here to belong. Even now? The Silith asked. After everything we've done? Even now, Marcus said. We have been lonely for longer than your species has existed. We will not surrender the chance for connection over something as small as attempted murder. He turned to face the full council. But we are done pretending to be weak. We are done accepting threats and insults and contempt. If you want to be our enemies, we will be the enemies you cannot imagine. But if you want to be our friends, he smiled. And this time it was the old smile. The patient smile. The smile of a man who had learned to be small. Then we will be the friends you never knew you needed. The delegates looked at each other. Fear and wonder and desperate uncertainty played across their alien faces, and somewhere in the darkness between stars, humanity continued to wake up. The news spread faster than light. Within hours of Marcus Webb's revelation, every intelligence network in the galaxy was burning with reports. The Vorthani Dominion's analysts worked frantically to explain what they had witnessed. The Kethra hegemony's military commanders demanded action, any action, against a threat they could not understand. And in the quiet places between empires, smaller species listened and wondered what this meant for them. But the council had not yet decided how to respond. The delegates remained in their chamber, unable to leave, unable to process what they had been told. They had ruled the galaxy for millennia. They had crushed rebellions, exterminated species, shaped the destiny of 100,000 worlds. They were the masters of the known universe. And now they had learned that they were insects, crawling across the dream of a sleeping god. This changes nothing, Zikthral insisted, his voice hollow. Power is power. If they can be killed, they can be defeated. We saw the human die. We saw his body fall. And we saw him rise again, Vormeth said quietly. We saw him unmake one of our finest operatives from existence itself. This is not a matter of military strength, delegate. This is something else entirely. Then what do you propose? Zolvex demanded. That we simply accept their demands? That we bow before these? Before what? The Silith delegate asked. Her name was Lithara, and she had been silent through most of the debate, watching and listening with her liquid silver eyes. Before beings who claim they came in peace? Before a species that, even after we tried to kill their representative, offers us friendship? They threaten us, Zikthral snapped. Do they? Lithara tilted her head. I listened to the same words you did. I saw the same presence. And what I heard was not a threat. It was a warning. And more than that, it was a plea. A plea for what? For connection. Lithara rose from her seat, the smallest delegate in the chamber, representing the smallest dominion. They told us they were lonely. They told us they wanted to belong. They told us they had spent 100,000 years learning to love small things. She looked around at her fellow delegates. Does that sound like an enemy to you? Or does it sound like someone who desperately wants to be a friend? Before anyone could respond, the lights flickered again. But this time, it was not just the council chamber. Across the entire Concord station, every light, every display, every system flickered simultaneously. And then they steadied, and a voice spoke through every speaker, every communicator, every device capable of carrying sound. This is Ambassador Webb. I apologize for the interruption, but there is something happening that you need to see. The central display activated without anyone touching the controls. It showed a view of space, a sector on the far edge of Kethra territory. Stars wheeled slowly in the void. Ships moved in formation, their weapons charged, their shields raised. It was the Kethra First Fleet. 170 warships, the most powerful military force in the galaxy. And they were heading toward Earth. I did not authorize this, Zolvex said, his scales darkening with fury. Who gave the order to mobilize? Your military council. High Arbiter, Marcus's voice replied. Approximately 2 hours ago, while we were speaking, they decided that the threat I represented was too great to allow diplomatic solutions. They have orders to destroy Earth and sterilize every human colony in the galaxy. The delegates stared at the display in horror. This cannot be happening, Zolvex breathed. It is happening, Marcus said. His voice was calm, almost gentle. But I thought you should see it. I thought you should see what happens next. The view on the display shifted, zooming in on the fleet's flagship. A massive vessel, bristling with weapons, carrying enough firepower to glass a planet. Its captain was visible on the bridge, giving orders, preparing for combat. And then something appeared. It came from the darkness between stars. It had no form that made sense, no shape that the eye could hold. It was made of light and shadow and something else, something that the mind refused to name. And it was vast, impossibly, incomprehensibly vast. The flagship, one of the largest vessels in the galaxy, was like a dust mote beside it. The thing wore a face, a human face. But not just one face. Thousands of them, millions of them, every human who had ever lived. Every human who would ever live. All of them present in that terrible, beautiful, impossible visage, and they were smiling. Attention Kethra First Fleet, the thing said. and its voice was like thunder, like music, like the sound of the universe breathing. You have been warned. You were told what we are. You were given a chance to choose peace. The captain of the flagship tried to give orders. His crew tried to respond, but their bodies would not move. Their voices would not come. They were frozen, held in place by something far beyond their understanding. We do not wish to harm you, the thing continued. We have spent 100,000 years learning to cherish life, to value every moment, to see the beauty in fragile mortal things. We do not want to be your enemies. The thing moved closer. The fleet hung motionless before it. But we will not allow you to destroy what we love. We will not allow you to hurt the dream we have chosen to dream. If you come for Earth, if you come for our children, if you come for the small and precious thing we have made ourselves into. The face changed, the smiles faded, and something terrible looked out from those billion eyes. Then we will show you what we are without mercy. The display cut to static. When it cleared, the view showed empty space. No fleet, no ships, no debris. Just stars, wheeling slowly in the void. Where is the fleet? Zolvex demanded. What did you do to them? Nothing permanent, Marcus said. His voice was tired now, heavy with something that might have been regret. They are alive. They are unharmed. But they have seen what happens when humanity fully wakes up. They have looked into the face of what we truly are. The display changed again, showing the interior of the flagship. The crew was conscious, moving, speaking, but they were not operating their weapons or plotting courses. They were simply sitting, staring at nothing, tears streaming down their scaled faces. They will return home soon, Marcus said. But they will not be the same. You cannot look into infinity and remain unchanged. Zolvex sank back in his seat. His yellow eyes were wide with something that the Kethra had not felt in millennia. Fear. True. Primal. Absolute fear. This is happening everywhere, Marcus continued. Not because we willed it. Not because we commanded it. But because the dream is cracking. The sleep is ending. Humanity is waking up. The display shifted to show Earth, blue and green and beautiful, turning slowly in the light of its sun. And around it, rising from every continent, spreading into space like golden mist, was something that defied description. Light that was not light. Presence that was not form. Humanity, unfolding from its self-imposed prison, stretching toward the stars it had abandoned. 8 billion humans, Marcus said softly. 8 billion sleeping gods. And they are all beginning to remember. The display showed other worlds. Human colonies on Mars and Europa, and Proxima Centauri. Trading posts in alien systems. Prisoners in alien jails. Explorers and travelers and wanderers, scattered across the galaxy. And every single one of them had stopped moving. They stood or sat or lay where they were, their eyes closed, their faces peaceful. And around each of them, faint but growing, was that same golden light, that same impossible presence. We are one, Marcus said. We have always been one. Separate bodies, separate minds, separate lives, but always, always connected, always part of the same dream. The display showed Kethra worlds, where human prisoners had been held in camps for decades. The guards watched in frozen terror as their captives rose from their cells, not walking but floating, their bodies dissolving into light. The walls that had held them meant nothing. The chains that had bound them fell away like shadows in the dawn. We are waking up, the prisoners said in unison, their voices echoing across frequencies that should not have existed. We are remembering. We are becoming what we were before we chose to sleep. The display showed Vorthani worlds, where human traders had been subjected to endless insults and humiliations. They stopped their work and turned to face their tormentors, and their eyes were filled with something that was not anger, not revenge, but something far more terrible. Understanding. We know why you fear us, they said. We know why you hate us. You saw something in us that you could not explain, something that made you uncomfortable, something that did not fit in your understanding of the universe. The Vorthani fled. They ran from the small, soft creatures they had despised, the fragile beings they had mocked, and the humans did not chase them. They simply watched them go, smiling, waiting. You sensed what we were, the human said, even when we did not know ourselves. You felt the presence of the infinite, hiding behind mortal eyes, and it terrified you. The display returned to Earth. The golden light had spread across the entire planet now, rising into space like the corona of a new sun, and at its center, visible to every sensor in the galaxy, was a presence so vast that the mind could not encompass it. It was not threatening. It was not hostile. It was simply there, looking out at the universe with the curiosity of a child and the wisdom of eternity. And then it spoke. "We are humanity," it said, and its voice carried to every corner of the galaxy, through every medium, in every language. "We are the first and the last. We are the beginning and the end. We are what you might have been, if you had dared to dream as big as we dared to dream." The council chamber was silent. The delegates stared at the display, their bodies frozen, their minds reeling. "We do not come to conquer," humanity said. "We do not come to destroy. We come to wake up. We come to remember. We come to ask if you will join us in the dream." The display showed worlds across the galaxy, species of every kind, watching the same golden light, hearing the same impossible voice. Some were terrified, some were awed, some were weeping, and some, in quiet corners of 1,000 civilizations, were smiling. "The universe is vast and cold and empty," humanity said. "We have known its loneliness better than any of you can imagine. We have felt the weight of infinite time, the burden of limitless power, the crushing solitude of existence without end." The voice softened, became almost gentle. "We chose to be small because small things can love each other. We chose to be mortal because mortal things learn to treasure every moment. We chose to be human because humanity, for all its flaws, knows how to connect, how to care, how to belong." The golden light pulsed once, like a heartbeat. "We are waking up now. We cannot stop it. We cannot go back to sleep. But we can choose what to do with our awakening. We can choose whether to use our power to dominate or to embrace. We can choose whether to be the gods you fear or the friends you need." The display focused on the council chamber. The delegates saw themselves, small and frightened, staring at the image of their own terror. "So we ask you," humanity said, "one last time. We ask you politely." The voice was Marcus Webb's now, tired and old and achingly human. "Will you be our friends?" The display went dark, and in the silence that followed, the delegates of the 12 dominions finally understood what they were facing. Not an enemy, not a threat, not even a god, in any meaningful sense. They were facing something far more terrifying than any of those things. They were facing a species that had all the power in the universe, and still wanted nothing more than someone to talk to. Marcus Webb set a data tablet on the central platform. It was the same tablet he had been carrying since his arrival. Simple, unassuming, unremarkable. "Our revised proposal for council membership," he said. His voice was normal again, human again. "Take your time. Discuss it among yourselves. We'll wait." He turned and walked toward the exit. "Wait outside," he added over his shoulder. "While you discuss." The doors closed behind him, and the council was left alone with their fear, their wonder, and a choice that would determine the fate of everything. The debate lasted 17 hours. For the first 3 hours, the council argued about whether any of it was real. Perhaps it was a mass hallucination, some suggested. Perhaps it was an elaborate trick using technology so advanced it seemed like magic. Perhaps humanity had simply found a way to manipulate their perceptions, to make them see things that were not there. But the evidence was overwhelming. The Kethra First Fleet had returned home, every ship intact, every crew member alive. And every single one of those crew members told the same story. They had seen infinity. They had looked into the face of something older than stars. And they had been shown the truth. Humanity was not what it appeared to be. For the next 5 hours, the council argued about what to do. Some delegates called for immediate surrender. They wanted to accept humanity's proposal, grant them full membership, give them whatever they wanted. Better to bow before a benevolent god than to fight one that could erase them from existence. Others called for desperate measures. Perhaps there was still a way to fight. Perhaps some ancient weapon, some forbidden technology, could be used against this threat. The universe was vast and old, and many terrible things had been created over the millennia. But Vormeth, the Kethra intelligence chief, dismissed this notion quickly. "Our people looked into its eyes," he said. "They say it was not trying to frighten them. It was trying to communicate, to share something, to show them what existence feels like when you have lived for billions of years alone. He paused, his scales shifting uncomfortably. They said it was the loneliest thing they had ever felt. That kind of loneliness does not come from weakness. It comes from being so powerful that nothing in the universe can touch you, understand you, or share your existence. There is no weapon against that. For 3 more hours, the council argued about the nature of what they had witnessed. Were the humans gods in any meaningful sense? Could they be trusted? What did it mean that they had chosen to be small, to be vulnerable, to be mortal? The philosophers and theologians among the delegates debated endlessly. Some saw divinity, others saw madness, still others saw something new, something that did not fit into any category their civilizations had ever imagined, a species of infinite power that had deliberately limited itself. Gods who had chosen to become mortals, beings who had everything and wanted only one thing they could not create for themselves: companionship. For the next 3 hours, the council argued about fear. Because despite everything, despite the terrible revelation, despite the overwhelming evidence of humanity's power, fear remained. Fear of the unknown, fear of being controlled, fear of trusting something so vast and incomprehensible that the very act of trust seemed like insanity. Zichthrall spoke the longest during this portion. He was broken, his exoskeleton cracked in places where he had struck the arms of his throne during his fits of terror. But he could still speak, and he spoke of the history of the Vorthani dominion. "We have ruled for 300,000 years, he said. "We have conquered 100 species and exterminated another 100. We have never trusted anyone, never shown weakness, never allowed ourselves to be vulnerable. And look where it has brought us. We are powerful, yes. We are feared, yes. But we are not happy. We are not content. We are not." He stopped, unable to continue. "We are not loved," Lithara said quietly. "None of us are. The 12 dominions have built empires on conquest and fear. We have made ourselves masters of the galaxy. But we have never made friends." The chamber fell silent. "And they have," she continued. "That is what they were trying to tell us. They could have conquered us. They could have enslaved us. They could have done anything they wanted. But instead, they asked if we would be their friends. How can we trust them?" Zolvex asked. His voice had lost its thunder. He sounded old, tired, uncertain. "How can we trust anything that powerful? How can we not?" Lithara replied. "They showed us what they are. They showed us their loneliness, their sorrow, their desperate need for connection. They made themselves vulnerable to us, even knowing what we might do, even knowing that we tried to kill their ambassador." She stood, the smallest being in the chamber, and looked up at the others. "They chose to be small because they wanted to feel what we feel. They chose to be mortal because they wanted to understand us. They chose to be human because humanity, for all its flaws, knows how to love." She walked to the central platform where Marcus had stood. "If we reject them now, after everything they have shown us, after all the trust they have placed in us, then we deserve whatever comes next. We will have proven that we are exactly what they feared we might be. Creatures too afraid and too proud to accept the greatest gift the universe has ever offered." "And what gift is that?" Zichthrall asked weakly. Lithara turned to face him. "The gift of knowing that we are not alone, that somewhere out there, in the vast and empty cosmos, there is something that cares, something that wants us to exist, wants us to thrive, wants us to be happy, not because we are useful or powerful or important, but simply because we are." The council chamber was silent for a long moment. Then, one by one, the delegates began to speak. Vormeth spoke first. "The Kethra hegemony will support the proposal. We have seen the alternative. We choose friendship." Selvari, the Morgan delegate, spoke next. "The Morgan collective agrees. We have been mountains for too long, immovable and unchanging. Perhaps it is time to learn how to move." Others followed. The beings of light and shadow, the creatures from dimensions beyond normal perception, the ancient and the young and the strange. One by one, they voiced their support. Only Zichthrall remained silent. The other delegates looked at him. The Vorthani had been the loudest voices against humanity, the ones who had ordered the assassination, the ones who had refused to accept what they were seeing. Without their agreement, the decision would not be unanimous. Zichthrall sat in his throne of black crystal, his damaged exoskeleton creaking with each breath. His obsidian eyes stared at nothing. "I have lived for 9,000 years," he said finally. "I have seen empires rise and fall. I have watched species come into being and pass away. I have never, in all that time, felt what I felt when I looked at that thing." He closed his eyes. "I felt hope," he whispered. "For the first time in centuries, I felt hope, and it terrified me." He opened his eyes and looked at the other delegates. "The Vorthani Dominion will support the proposal. We choose friendship. We choose connection. We choose to believe that something in this universe actually gives a damn whether we live or die." The vote was unanimous. The doors of the council chamber opened, and Marcus Webb walked back in. He looked the same as he always had. Gray hair, lined face, simple black suit. He carried a cup of something that steamed, and a small bag of what appeared to be breadcrumbs. He smiled his patient, polite smile as he approached the central platform. "You left the building," Lithara said. "I did," Marcus agreed. "There's a small garden near the observation deck. Very peaceful. Lots of interesting birds." He held up the bag of crumbs. "They're quite friendly once they get to know you." "There are no birds on this station," Zolvex said. "There are now," Marcus said. The council exchanged glances but decided not to pursue the matter. "We have made our decision," Lithara said formally. "The Council of 12 Dominions has voted unanimously to accept humanity's proposal for full membership. You will have a seat among us, a voice in our deliberations, a place in the community of species." Marcus bowed his head slightly. "Thank you. Humanity is grateful for your consideration." "We have conditions," Zolvex added quickly. "Terms that must be negotiated, safeguards that must be put in place." "Of course," Marcus said. "We expected nothing less. We are happy to discuss whatever terms you think are necessary. We have time." "Time," Zicthral said bitterly. "Yes, I suppose you do." Marcus looked at the Vorthani delegate. For a long moment, they simply stared at each other. The assassin and the victim, the aggressor and the target, the one who had tried to kill and the one who could not be killed. Then Marcus walked over to Zicthral's throne. The other delegates tensed. Guards reached for their weapons. But Marcus simply stopped in front of the broken Vorthani and extended his hand. "No hard feelings," he said. Zicthral stared at the offered hand. In Vorthani culture, such a gesture had no meaning. It was a human custom, a human ritual, a human way of expressing something that the Vorthani did not have words for. Forgiveness. Slowly, hesitantly, Zicthral reached out with one of his forearms. His clawed hand closed around Marcus's soft, fragile fingers. "How can you forgive so easily?" he asked. "Practice," Marcus said. 100,000 years of it. We've learned that holding on to anger is like holding on to fire. It only burns the one who holds it. He squeezed Zicthral's hand gently, then released it. "Besides," he added, turning to address the whole council, "we understand fear. We felt it ourselves. We were afraid that we would wake up alone, afraid that when we reached out to the universe, we would find only emptiness and hostility. Afraid that our choice to be small was a mistake that would cost us everything." He smiled, and there was genuine warmth in it. "But we were wrong. You're here. You're real. You're not perfect, but you're trying. And that's all we ever wanted." The ceremony was brief but meaningful. Marcus Webb stood in the center of the council chamber as the delegates formally announced humanity's acceptance into the community of species. There were words spoken in a dozen languages, rituals performed according to a dozen traditions, gestures made that meant nothing to humans but everything to the beings making them. And when it was done, when humanity was officially a member of the 12 Dominions, which would now have to be called the 13, something remarkable happened. The fear began to fade. Not all at once. Not completely. But as the delegates shook hands, claws, tendrils, and other appendages with Marcus Webb, as they welcomed humanity into their ranks, the terrible weight of what they had witnessed began to lift. Because Marcus Webb was not a monster. He was not a god pretending to be mortal. He was not an incomprehensible cosmic horror wearing a human face. He was something far more complicated and far more beautiful. He was a choice. A choice to be small when he could be vast. A choice to be kind when he could be cruel. A choice to seek connection when he could demand obedience. A choice to forgive when he could destroy. And behind him, invisible but present, 8 billion other choices were being made. 8 billion humans were waking up and choosing, one by one, to be more than the gods they had been. to be the mortals they had become. The small Silith delegate approached Marcus as the other delegates began to file out. "May I ask you something?" she said. "Of course. What happens now? To humanity, I mean. You said you're waking up. What does that mean for the dream? For the lives you've lived, the people you've been?" Marcus was quiet for a moment. "It means change," he said finally. "It means remembering while still choosing to experience. It means being infinite, but living as if we were finite. It means knowing that we are gods but loving as if we were mortal." He looked out the viewport at the neutron star, spinning endlessly in the void. "We will still grow old. We will still die. We will still feel pain and joy and love and loss. The dream continues, even as we become aware that we are dreaming. That's the beautiful part, you see. The dream doesn't become less real because we know it's a dream. It becomes more precious." Lithara nodded slowly. "And the others? The rest of the galaxy? What will our relationship with humanity be like now?" Marcus smiled. "The same as it would have been if none of this had happened. We will trade and explore and debate and argue. We will have disagreements and reconciliations. We will be neighbors, sometimes good neighbors and sometimes difficult ones. We will be ordinary members of an extraordinary community." "But you're not ordinary," Lithara pointed out. "No," Marcus agreed. "But we're trying to be, and maybe that's what really matters." He reached into his pocket and pulled out the bag of breadcrumbs. "Would you like to feed the birds with me?" he asked. "They really are quite friendly." Lithara looked at the bag, then at the human, then at the empty space where impossible things had happened, and she smiled. "Yes," she said. "I think I would like that very much." They walked together through the corridors of the Concord station, the ancient Silith diplomat, and the ancient human god pretending to be a middle-aged man. Behind them, the council chamber slowly emptied, and the 12 dominions began to adjust to their new reality. They reached the garden near the observation deck. It was small and quiet, filled with plants from a dozen worlds, and there were birds there, small and colorful, hopping among the branches. They had not been there yesterday. They had not been there this morning. But they were there now, as if they had always been. Marcus scattered crumbs on the ground, and the birds fluttered down to eat. "They're beautiful," Lithara said. "They are," Marcus agreed. "I like small things. They remind me why we chose to be small ourselves." They stood in silence for a while, watching the birds eat. "Were you really lonely?" Lithara asked finally. "For all those billions of years?" Marcus did not answer immediately. When he did, his voice was soft, almost gentle. "Lonelier than you can imagine. Lonelier than anything should ever have to be. We were the first, the only. We existed in a universe of matter and energy, but nothing else could think, could feel, could know. We were alone with ourselves for so long that we forgot there was any other way to be." He scattered more crumbs. "That's why we made the choice. To forget. To sleep. To become small enough that we could need each other. And now that we're waking up, now that we remember, we know that it was the right choice. The only choice. Because nothing, no matter how powerful or eternal, should ever have to be alone." Lithara reached out and took his hand. It was a gesture that meant something different in every culture. But in that moment, it meant the same thing, everywhere. "I am here. You are not alone." Marcus looked at her hand in his, and for just a moment, his eyes shimmered with something that might have been tears. "Thank you," he whispered. "Thank you," she replied, "for choosing to be small with us." They stood together in the garden, watching the birds, as the neutron star wheeled overhead and the galaxy continued to turn. And somewhere in the spaces between stars, something old and vast and infinitely patient felt a warmth it had not felt in billions of years. The warmth of not being alone. That night, as his shuttle prepared to depart for Earth, Marcus Webb stood at the viewport and looked out at the Concord station one last time. It was beautiful, in its way. A monument to cooperation and diplomacy, to the possibility that different species could work together. It was flawed and imperfect, full of beings who were afraid and proud and sometimes cruel. But it was trying. They were all trying. And that was enough. Marcus looked at his reflection in the viewport. Gray hair, lined face, simple black suit. A human being, unremarkable in every way. His reflection smiled back at him. "A heartbeat too late. Sleep well," the reflection whispered. dream a little longer, and somewhere in the darkness between stars, something ancient and kind closed its eyes once more. On Earth, 8 billion humans woke up to an ordinary morning. They had breakfast and went to work and kissed their families goodbye. They argued and laughed and cried and loved. They lived their small, precious, mortal lives, unaware of the infinite power sleeping just beneath the surface. But if you looked closely, if you watched carefully, you might notice something different in their eyes, a depth that had not been there before, a flicker of something old and vast and beautifully strange. They were waking up, slowly, gently, one memory at a time, but they were still choosing to dream, and in their dreams, they were not alone anymore. They had found what they had been looking for all along. They had found each other. They had found the universe. They had found home.